Text Prison Story Family Salute. Y'all, it's your boy Tim Snow back here with another one. We got a special episode. Glad to have this fella here. I actually talked to him on the phone the other day for a long time. It was kind of cool. Good vibes, good stories. And he understands what we do here. We show people that this is not the life you want, right? And inmates, we can tell all the stories in the world, but the real true facts is we don't get to move around freely inside of a penitentiary. We don't get to go to cell block, wing to wing. We don't know what's going on like they do. And a correctional officer gets to see it all. They get to experience it all. So we're happy to have him here. His name is Mike, aka Boss Man, and he's a fellow truck driver too. We just got through doing some good truck driver talk. So much respect to that. Mike, you told me that you started being a prison guard when you was 18 years old. I was just wondering what motivated you and made you want to be a prison guard.
Like most, a lot of these prisons are in small, rural, little bitty one-horse towns. I started Price Daniel Unit, and that's in Snyder, where I was born. So you really didn't have a choice between working the oil field, cotton gin was still open at that time, or go work the penitentiary. And just to me, it sounded like the penitentiary was a better option. Again, I was 18, fresh out of high school, so I didn't know what I was really getting myself into.
No, I believe him. Did you know what the Price Daniel unit was going to be like before you applied?
The only thing I knew about the Daniels unit was that it was real, more like a cake eater farm, is what a lot of people called it. You had, your trustees and a lot of low-level inmates. Most of the guys were, in their 30s-ish and above, I guess. And then we had a PC, and then we also had one medium custody, but our medium was nothing compared to all the other units.
When you say PC over there, what type of guys was in PC?
A lot of times we would get guys that were, I know we had like one that his daddy was a judge, and then we had a couple cops in there. We even had one TDC officer that was in there that got locked up, and they immediately shipped him off to PC. And then, we had a lot of the homosexuals that were getting punked out and turned out, that kind of stuff.
So here's a question. You didn't tell me that. How was the ex TDC officer? How was he treated by the guards in there?
Oh, everybody treated him like shit.
They did him dirty.
Oh, we would, and I want to make sure, because I'm gonna say we a lot. When I mean we, I'm just talking about the officers in general. Like we talked on the phone, I saw a lot of crazy shit that officers would do to inmates, and officers would do to other officers, that kind of shit. I just did my 8 and hit the gate and went home. I didn't conversate with these officers after work. I didn't, they knew I had their back, and I didn't ever really trust that they had mine. But these officers, yeah, they did him dirty. Constant cell searches. They gassed him a couple times for no apparent reason. We pencil whipped whatever we needed to make it justified.
Right. So that, you know what? That's a word I hadn't heard since I've been locked up. Pencil whip, right there, boy. That's crazy. So basically, what he's saying is that when you pencil whip somebody, we used to say it on dominoes, that somebody faking the score on you or something like that, knowing they lost but they win, and that's how it's always gonna be in prison, man. When I say it, it holds a little bit of weight, but when he says it's a lot more. So when you write an inmate a case or a charge or accuse him of something, there's a disciplinary charge wrote, paperwork done. Then that'll go to a little court proceeding or whatever we called it, kangaroo court.
Kangaroo court.
Did you ever have anybody beat a case you wrote in kangaroo court?
Normally, like, I didn't ever write cases. I could usually talk, man on man with the inmate, or once I started progressing, the older I got, I started learning, how things worked. So I would always try to figure out who he was riding with and who was above him. And I go to whoever was above him and tell him the issue I was having. And usually it got handled, because we both know, like, yeah, we run shit, but we don't run shit in the penitentiary. Y'all,
Right.
Inmates run that thing. So I would always, if he was a Wood, a TS, or whatever, I would try to figure out whoever was above him, tell him what we got going on, and usually that got handled. Sometimes it got handled with fists. Sometimes they just go tell him, like, back off, or the officers are going to come down on you, that kind of stuff.
All right. Man, hey, you know what? I'd rather have you guarding the block any day. Because, well, I tell you what, some of them are horrendous writing those cases. They really do.
Oh yeah.
That. So, do these officers, do they enjoy writing these cases? Like they seem like are they in the break room bragging about these cases?
I would say it's a 50-50. Like you had RoboCops, like let's make sure we like tell everybody. So a lot of these officers that are coming in are usually, if they're not like me that just came from rural areas, they wanted to be a cop or they're wanting to go be a cop. But most of them can't be a cop because of physical standards or mental standards. So they get in there and they think that they're the police. We ain't the police. Me and you talked about it. My job is to count you, make sure you don't escape, and that's it. But I knew officers that, yeah, I mean, like they get off on writing a case. Like we were actually told, I'll never forget it, when I was going through OJT at the Daniels, we were told if we write a case, we better be able to give 45 across the board. Whatever it is we're going to write, make sure it's 45 across the board.
So make sure it's worth it if you write it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to just write some bullshit case, some like low level 3 case, most of the time officers wouldn't even do it. But if you pissed off the officer enough, they're going to go for level 3, level 2, and if they can, they're going to even try to stick a level 1 on you and get you, send you to the hole.
I was just wondering that because I've never had anybody ask that question, because you can clearly tell some of them are like almost sadistic with them cases, like they really enjoy it. You know what I mean? And then there's some that, like you said, well, man, I've known COs that I've never seen write a case, but I've seen some that might write 3, 4, or 5 in a single day, and everybody knows when they come. So it's just so that job is a state job, man. It's going to have a variety of people just like anybody else, all personalities and stuff like that. But all right, so when you got to Price Daniels and you're seeing how it is over here, this is your first prison. Are you thinking, man, this is not what I expected because it's a little bit more softer than where you ended up, or what?
Well, I still remember, like, I believe it was the first day, second day after I got out of the academy, which was a joke, but I got out of the academy, and I'll never forget, you walk in, you go straight down the sidewalk, and eventually you would run into the chow hall, and they had all of us new boots. And when I say new boots, I'm talking about new guys. They had us there, and we was pat searching. This is the story I told you. I told this guy, I said it was a pretty good size, black guy. And you got to remember, so that way they can get. I mean, I look like I just walked off the Backstreet Boys bus. I was that young. I was 140 pounds, soaking wet at the time. And I never forget, because I said, "Okay, offender, come here." And man, you would have thought I called him, a bitch or something, because he's like, "I ain't no offender, I'm a convict." And I was like, "Oh shit," realizing real quick, like I could just that fast get into a altercation with somebody just by calling them offender, because that's what we were taught. Don't call them inmate, don't call them convict, call them an offender. And man, from that day forward, it was never offender. It was either convict or inmate.
That's the moment right there when you realize that training was bullshit, huh?
Oh yeah, because think about it. You're taking me, this little country boy, weighs $140, and raised in a town where we still had Piggly Wigglies, bro. And you put me in there with people that are from Houston, Dallas, Corpus Christi, Galveston, that were raised on the street. Straight. We had killers in there. We had a lot of killers. We had a lot of chomos, a lot of pedos. But we did have quite a few guys that were in there for murder. And I learned real fast within the first week that it wasn't anything like what they said it was going to be.
Right. That's what I was wondering. So I wanted you to say that, right? Because here's the deal. If you're one of those pedos out here, if you're one of the weirdos, if you're doing all that stuff, yeah, they might send you to Price Daniels unit where you want to go. But guess what? Some of them men are still going to be killers over there. Some of them are still going to be wild as hell. Like, you're not going to be all the way by yourself. You know what I mean? And they need to know that, right? Like, don't think you're going to catch a free ride in Texas when you're touching these little kids and all that type of stuff. And then, so this is what I wanted to ask you, and we talked about it. When people hit a prison like that, and you're the CO, you're the guard, is there talk and whispers like, hey, that's that guy that raped all those kids in Houston, or that's that guy that was on the news? Like, are y'all knowing and talking about it when somebody hits like that?
So a normal officer, C1 through C3, or CO1 through CO3, normally can't see your travel pass or your green card, whatever they take. I know a bunch of people called it different. But if we were able to get word, because it happens sometimes, whether it came from a lieutenant, a major, we would find out. Say you got like inmate Smith that just came through, word would get down to us officers like, hey, that's so and so that raped little kids or whatever it was. So one of two things would happen. Normally, the officers were always going to make your day. Every day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, we were going to make your life miserable. And then a lot of the officers that were actually like, I guess you could say cool or knew the people to talk to, like if you were a white boy, like they would go to the woods and they'd tell the woods, hey, Smith, that's a baby raper, that's child molesting, and just leave it at that and walk off and be like, what happens, happens. Just don't do it while I'm inside the wing. So you tell him, hey, and then you come back and he's all lumped up and he's catching out.
Yeah. So I mean, real talk that we know. You know what I mean? Like y'all are humans on the other side too. Y'all don't like that. You know what I mean? That. So what he said when this first started, I want to ask you about it specifically because so many family, so many loved ones, so many people have this prison stuff misinterpreted, right? Is your job to protect these inmates? Plain and simple. Are you
No.
supposed to like run in there and break it up and be the referee and jump and save them? Like, what is your job here?
So I'll give you like the technical, what we learned when we went through school. You go through school, we are supposed to do everything within our power to protect the inmate from being assaulted while protecting ourselves. Now, let's get into what really happens. If two inmates are swinging it, whether they got a blade or they just swinging, the most we're going to do is walk up, pull out our gas, and try to spray both of the inmates. But most of these officers, as you know too, they talk a big game and they ain't going to get over there. I mean, half the time there was officers that I'm like, damn, if I'm getting assaulted with an inmate or we're going at it, this motherfucker ain't going to have my back, But to your question, as a plain answer, no, we're not going to go save your loved one.
Right. I don't. So I'm surprised they even put that in the job description like you described it at first because I say it all the time. Their job is exactly what he said. It's to count you and keep you inside those gates. That's primary objective. And their number 3 objective is them making home safe. Period. Not your loved one be safe. That's like pretty far down on the list here. A man has to protect himself inside of a prison. That's why there's so many prison gangs, cliques, stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's almost some places it's not needed at all. Some people never need it. Some people need it. Everybody's not a tough guy. Shit, man. Everybody ain't 6 foot 220. Everybody's not Superman. Everybody can't even fight good. You know what I mean? But everybody goes to prison. So imagine being one of those little guys that can't fight good, and now they send you to a maximum security prison.
Well, it's funny we're talking about that. Like, I don't know if you knew this or not, and things may have changed, but we would carry usually in our breast pocket or it's supposed to be in our, somewhere on our person. There were these little plastic things, one-way air is what they were. And when you open them up, they were about this big of plastic that would go around your mouth, right? And it was a tube that would go in your mouth. That was made for us to be, if we needed to perform CPR on you. So that way there was just one way and we couldn't contract anything. Man, I can't tell you how many officers I knew that would just chunk it. And, and depending on, if we were getting checked, just make sure that we had our, we would carry that little pocket book that would have all the different offenses that we could write you up for. We would also be asked, like, hey, do you have your CPR deal or whatever? If you didn't, then they just tell you, all right, go down to, control and go get you another one because you were supposed to have it. But I didn't know any officer in there that was ever going to be like, I ain't giving no inmate a mouth to mouth. I mean, like, it's no like life. That.
Yeah, no. So when you was on Price Daniels, I know you went to Smith Unit. We're gonna get into that in a second. When you were on Price Daniels, where there were people like that, did y'all? How many times did you see real life chomos getting lumped up like that? Would it happen a lot, or was it just kind of every now and then, or what?
I'd say it was like every now and then at that unit. At that unit, it was every now and then. A lot of the chomos would go over to like the J, I think it was J wing, Because like when you walked in, you had a building here, a building over here, which was the trustees, then 1, 2, and then medium. And we usually kept a lot of them on the same building so that way they wouldn't get attacked. But at Daniels, man, I mean, we had some fights and we had some, I don't even, did we have stabbings? I think I can remember like 1 or 2, but I didn't see like what I would consider, or maybe you would consider like true penitentiary until I got to Shitty Smitty.
Right. Oh, I believe it. So what actually led you to get the transfer? Like, how'd you end up on Smith unit?
So back in, what was it, May or March of 2000, I think it was when that big riot popped off in La Mesa. They had a, so that way people know, like the riot started off in the chow hall because one of the inmates pulled his junk out and started fondling it in the middle of the chow hall to a female officer, and then it popped off, and we didn't have the separation to make 2 yards. It was still wide open wreck. So that crap went way south, and any available officer that they could get from any surrounding prisons, which was like Snyder, Abilene, Colorado City, Lubbock, the Moffett unit, the medical unit, like they started pulling all of us. We started locking down all the other units. So I went over there. So when I went over, So I went over there and I got a taste of what a riot was like. And man, that shit, the shows didn't even get near it. But after that, I went back to Daniels for a little bit, and I was stupid. I wanted to get where there was more action. And then when I went over there, I was like, damn, I wish I was still at the Daniels.
I mean, I understand it's still young. You know what I'm saying? Now you really seeing what that life is like. Now that riot was one of the worst ones in Texas prison history, though. Like it was bad because it lasted for so long and it got so wide out of control. I think, did they really have to call the National Guard in?
Well, I don't know about the National Guard, but I remember we saw there was a shit ton of DPS everywhere. They were getting ready to get up and start taking shots if they had to.
That's what it is. I just had to blow my nose. That's why I turned the camera off. I'm getting sick. But
no, you good?
Yeah, DPS, not National Guard. That's where they come. They got the DPS copter that'll come sometimes. Yeah, so man.
Yeah, the DPS copter was over the top and radioing it because I mean it was a war zone. I think it was one inmate died because they got a hold of the Aggies.
Yeah,
and they started running around with the Aggies. Yeah, and then you'd see some of the inmates running around with our masks on, our gas masks.
Now that was what you told me that I'd never heard anybody say. They grabbed the gas mask. That was the craziest one ever, right there. They were thinking for sure.
They get the officer down to get his gas mask off. And see, we were taking, we called them bouncing Bettys, those big old black ball looking tear gas bombs that we'd throw. Yeah, and La Mesa was running out of it. So all these other units were pulling from their armory to take it down there. And it wasn't doing no good because in West Texas, that the wind blows 90 miles an hour. So every time we'd throw gas or they'd be trying to use the pepper fogger, it would just come right back in our face.
Oh, my God. So that's probably what made it take so long, too. That's wild. So listen, when you get to Smith, you're a young buck looking for some excitement, right? You showed me a picture, though, later, how big you started getting, lifting weights, working out. Did stepping up to this other level prison like make you want to get on the weights and step it up?
Absolutely. So when I went to Smith, I'm gonna have to call you right back.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. He had a phone call. But what I was saying is, when you got to Smith unit, is the seriousness and the real life level of that what made you want to start working out, lifting weights, and getting bigger?
Yeah, because I realized real quick. So that's a gladiator farm, and I don't even know if they still call it farms anymore. But that's a gladiator unit, and so a lot of those guys were young kids, young bucks, 20s, early 30s, and I actually started working out because I went over to Max is where I started, and then I would move over to GP. But I went to Max, and I just started watching, like, how the inmates worked out burpees, push-ups, sit-ups. I just started copying what they did, and then later on switched it over to working out with weights.
Yeah, I did. Did you feel a difference like later on once you really started getting? Because you got big as hell, dog. You was like big. Could you tell a difference between how they treated you when you was coming in 150, 160 compared to when you was benching 350?
So I think that it actually caused me to get more shit than it did when I was little, because then, I was the bigger guy, I was the bigger officer, and sometimes more people I thought at the beginning would want to talk shit, especially those one that just came off a chain, because you was the big CO. So they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go talk shit to him and make myself something. But
Oh
later
man.
on, after about 6 to 8 months, once I started getting real big, they that shit kind of eased off, because they realized real quick that I was just going to do my job and leave it at that.
Right, right. And that goes a long ways in there, man. An officer that's like that is invaluable. Like not, there's no reason to make the time harder on these men. That's why I was asking earlier about some of these guards that just enjoy doing it, and we know they do. But all right, so listen, Smith Unit is a gladiator farm. I think it still is, always has been. It is young, wild, gang related. Now you're there with guys that are Texas Syndicate, Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood. Like you're not on the Daniels unit no more. You're where the heavy hitters are. These young guys
Yep.
probably got life
Congo
sentences, 95
Blast.
years, stuff like that. Uh, what would you consider the caliber of inmates? Were they really young convicts over there, or were they just wilding out, going crazy?
I'd say the caliber was probably young. A lot of them, I think, were, in their 20s up into their early 30s. And I mean, of course, they had some older, but I think as far as the actual population was concerned, I'd say it was between 20 and 35.
Yeah, but I'm saying, did they know what they were doing? Like, was that prison wide open, contraband, everything going like it's supposed to be,
Oh
cooking
yeah,
oil and all that
there
type
was
of shit?
oh yeah, contraband, stingers, blades. You name it, it was there.
What about did you see anybody stab anybody while you were over there?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few stabbings. I've only seen like an actual few deaths. Um, I was telling you that story, and it wasn't until I got to the Smith unit when I saw. I told you that story about there was a commotion going up on two rows. So you got one, the bottom, and then the second row, and we were trying to figure out. And what some of these level, how you were talking about, is it our job to save people? What they need to understand is that most of the time, you got 88 on this wing, 88 on this wing, and 88 on this wing, and 3 officers. That's it to control all those inmates. One's in the pod, so he or she ain't coming out. So there's just 2 of you to work the building. And I remember we saw this commotion going up on second row, and we're like, what the hell is going on? So we get in the door, we leave the D space, we open the door to go in, and just at that time we look up, and you can just barely see this white thing that's tied on the bar, so that way you won't fall over. And these motherfucking inmates chunk old boy over the second row and just, snapped his neck on the way down.
Mm,
And I'll be straight up, I puked everywhere.
mm. Was he did man? Just tossed
I
him
don't even
off, huh?
really know. Yeah, and I don't think I can't remember what it was exactly that he did. I heard it was all over a debt, like he was way, way in debt with a different family, and they just chunked him over the top and snapped his neck like it was a chicken bone.
Man, back then we talked about too when on the phone there wasn't very many cameras and people could get
No,
away with that. Like that was
absolutely.
literally absolutely easy to get away with if nobody says anything. So how did that change the perspective of your job when you see this man literally tied up, thrown off? Did it take you to a different level, a different place where you're like, oh
Oh,
shit?
yeah, I was. I mean, to me, it like fucked with me because you hear the stories, you see the shows or whatever on TV and stuff like that, and it's nothing like what you see on TV. Like everybody wants to talk about 60 days in. I'm like, that still ain't shit.
Uh-uh.
That still ain't what you're really, really gonna see.
Hell no. 60 days in county jail. They're not doing too much. Actually, I know somebody that was on 60 days in last season, believe it or not. Yeah. He set the world's record for the leaving the fastest. I think he made it 86 minutes.
Was that
Mm.
the CO that quit when he was in the tank?
No, he was an ex-prisoner, did like 19 years. He got on there and quit after 86 minutes because you get paid the same whether you stay 60 days or quit after quit
Huh.
after 60 minutes. He got his check and left. But so listen, I would have did the same. I ain't mad at him, but when that's a crazy story, right? That threw me for a loop, and I forgot you told me about that. Man, did they prosecute them dudes? Were they arrested and they catch anybody for throwing them over?
Yeah, there was a couple of them that got some free world charges.
I guess so. That's wild. So when that happened right there, what's that cell block like? Having to go back and guard that same cell block? Is it so? Obviously, it's like a gang hit. He owes money, and there's not a standing beef or anything. But is it like
Mhm.
eerily quiet? Everybody kind of silent, or is it just business as usual?
Just another day at the office. I mean, to the way that I can say what it felt like is it was just like somebody snapped a cat's neck, you know, like it was nothing. I mean, you know as well as I do, human life don't mean a whole lot beside behind them walls.
No, it's becoming worthless out here too. That's what's scary.
That's
For
why I
real.
love your catchphrase. You don't want this life. You gonna get screwed from the officers, and you are gonna get screwed from the inmates.
Yeah, I mean, so in the state of Texas, the citizens want it that way too. Yeah, this is a tough on
Hmm.
crime state. They want you to be punished, especially if you're one of them SOs. They want you to have it hard. So there's not going to be a change, right? We're not. We know this system is going to stay like this for a long time. So this is why we do the channel to
Hmm.
tell them just stay away from it because you're in a lose-lose situation, just like he said. Listen, Mike, you do have a crazy story that is unbelievable. So you can segue
I
into
think
that.
I, th-
But I
I
don't
think I
look.
know where you're going.
Yeah, you do because one of the ways that you can help kids stay out, we help kids. It's straight scaring them, but you got to be telling
Yeah,
them the truth, right? And so, is prison rape from the CO perspective? Is a prison rape a real thing? Is that something like comes gets reported?
absolutely.
Is people writing kites saying, "Hey, I just got raped"? How does this work?
Not very many people would do the whole like you're talking like the pre-act. I don't really remember. We had a few, but not a lot. I mean, you had to learn to keep your mouth shut. You're a dead man walking if you tell the law about anything. You snitch. What's that old saying? Snitches get stitches and end up in ditches.
It's extra real in prison. With so listen, the same. I'm just gonna keep it real, right? I know you will too.
Yeah,
You drop that Priya note, and then some guard, just like he might go around and say, "Hey, that's a sex offender." He might come back around and say, "Hey, he just dropped a kite on y'all, Priya type shit." And before that, before you can get any talk to anybody to get any help, somebody might have already notified the inmates that you told on them, right?
you got to know which officer to drop that Priya kite to, because like you're saying, not all officers are bad. And I love how you put that out there. Not all officers are bad. If you take 10 officers, you might get one, maybe two good ones if you're lucky. But the majority of them, they don't give a fuck about nothing. They don't care if they write cases, whatever. But um, I know like some people in there. Let's use Mexican Mafia for instance. Okay, let's say you're an officer and you doing some dirty stuff. You bringing in some dirty shit because we know how most of the drugs and contraband get in there and you working hand in hand with Mexican Mafia, So that officer, let's say you dropped a kite, somebody drops a kite, Priya, Mexican Mafia, it's not a thing for the officer to go walk up to whoever in the Mexican Mafia and tell them like, hey, you just got a kite dropped on so and so. This is my shift. Don't do it while I'm here.
All right. Yeah, and then best guess what? They're gonna take care of that problem right there. So in a prison setting, what do you as an ex guard recommend? Because people that watch this show, 70% of them haven't been to prison. Only 30 of them have. So if
Yeah,
you right now give a wife, a mom, a sister, a kid advice, if she finds out her husband, brother, whatever, is being sexually assaulted in a prison, because nowadays they got these phones on these tablets, right? And there
yeah.
are men calling out, telling their women, "I'm getting abused," and they're like, "What do you recommend they do about it?"
Man, that's real hard because it just depends on what unit it's at. And I mean, you know, I want to say, call it in and get him PC'd or possibly get him transferred. But as you said, with the cell phones, I'll transfer this inmate today to over here halfway across the state, and they're going to know about it probably before he gets there or when he gets there. But man, that's just so hard because, if you get the wrong unit, rank is going to tell officers on down the line what's going on. So if you're calling in there and complaining, even on big shit like that, the big shit, the big stuff, I would say call, the assistant warden and try to get them some help. But I think I know where you're going with this. Like, some people want to call about some bullshit about the food or roaches or things that, like you said, inmates have been dealing with since the beginning of the penitentiary system, and that ain't going to do nothing but make their life a living nightmare.
No, I know. So basically, his answer as an ex-10-year prison guard for what you do if your family member is getting sexually assaulted, there is no answer. Sorry, that's the crazy part. It's like literally, you might get some help or you might not, right? It's depends where you at, what's going on, who you tell, but it's a lose.
People try to do that ombudsman shit.
That really don't work. That's terrible right there.
That ombudsman is nothing but a joke.
Yeah, it's a pacifier they put in your mouth. That's it, because he works with them too. But listen, can you remember a time when somebody's family or wife or whatever was calling and complaining or whatever, and you heard like, "Hey, this dude's causing trouble" or something? Is that real?
Yep. Hold on, just to pause it real quick. I'm sorry, it's my boss.
You good? All right, sorry, y'all. Mr. Mike's doing this on his break at work, so we're really grateful for that. Sorry for the interruption. But what I was asking you is, so we were talking about people's families calling the wardens, complaining about stuff that's normal in a prison. Do you remember any times where people had did that, inmates done that, or it was ever any talk of that?
Yeah, we had this one white boy. His family was always on that phone, and they went so far as to go. They weren't getting the answer that they wanted from the warden, so they went above the warden and called up Huntsville, and that's like a big fucking no-no, because that set the warden off, because that had his superiors talking to him. So those saying shit rolls downhill, from the warden, assistant, major, down all the way to the building officers. And there were some officers that would do some shitty crap, and they were like, time to shut him up, because I'm like, don't ask me to do it, because he ain't done shit to me. But they it might be something as easy as getting excessive cell searches, or it might bump it up to writing bullshit cases to get him in the shoe, or it can go as far as physical retaliation from the officers.
Would that be something like a cell extraction that wasn't really needed or something?
No, I saw 3 old boys roll up into a dude's house and just bust him. They just put fist to boots.
Yeah. So I do remember hearing, I never personally witnessed this, thankfully. Excuse me. But I do remember hearing about a bunch of inmates falling downstairs and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Accidentally falling down.
Yeah, that was that. It's not funny, but I totally forgot about that. What happened to him? He fell down the stairs. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He fell down real hard. Yeah, okay. That's it.
Uh-huh. Right.
No matter if that inmate was trying to say no, or you had his homeboys. No, he didn't fall down the fucking stairs. Oh, but that's the way it did it in the paperwork.
Right. There goes the pencil whipping right there. Right. So listen, y'all, he's telling you the truth. It's not just from the inmate side. It's for real. Going over top the warden's head on something like that would be like calling the mayor about the police chief or something, and then expecting him not to be mad, or somebody calling your boss at work. It's never going to work out. You good, Mike? You need some time?
No, I'm good. I got about 15, 20 more minutes, so we're good.
Okay, that's all we need. So listen,
we can always do a part 2 if you want to.
Yeah, we probably will. There was a story that you told me that I wanted these youngsters to hear, and I'm not sure how you came across it, but you told me about that time in the cell. You know what I'm talking about too. Can you tell me how y'all even?
Oh yeah.
Was somebody screaming, hollering for help? Were y'all on countdown making rounds? What happened?
So I was working on it was over in Max, and you have Max, and then you also have a wing of close custody. I think it was A or B. You had close custody. So close custody is 2 people. I was working in my wing, and they came and got me and said, "Hey, you got to suit up. We got to go run. We got to go run a team on somebody." So I'm like, okay. So I get up and I get suited up. I'm number 5, which means I'm supposed to grab, I believe it was the left leg. And we go in, and you can hear this one young white boy screaming his head off. And we get up there, and he had got housed with somebody he should have never been housed with, and I still don't know how it happened. I'm thinking he must have made somebody mad. So as you know, you're supposed to be in there with somebody that's about your weight, about your height, within, what is it, like 50, 60 pounds. He was housed with another old boy that was, you know, outweighed him by 100, 150 pounds. I mean, big old black cat. And he was raping him. He was just going to town on him. And so I kind of like looked in there, and sure enough, he's got him up against the wall, just doing what he wants to do with him. And I'm like confused on why we're not running in. Well, that's when they told us he had a shank to his neck, and protocol, we couldn't go run in on him because he had the shank. And I'll never forget, you know, that the screams was like that of something out of a horror film. But the youngster was screaming like, "Just let him kill me, just let him kill me," because he knew if we ran in, they were going to stab him. And we just had to stand there and literally listen to old boy take it from him. And when old boy got done taking it, he just dropped the blade, laid on the ground like it was nothing, put his hands behind his back, and we didn't even run up in there. We walked up in there, shackled him up, and brought him out. I mean, he messed, as far as I remember, like when we gurneyed him out, it was like the whole Forrest Gump thing. He had to be laid on his stomach because of his back end. And my understanding is that boy got a whole bunch of stuff tore up on the inside of it.
Oh, I bet, man. That's real life, right? That's unbelievable. We talk about it in Texas prisons. The majority of murders happen between cellmates, you know, not even with weapons either. They're literally beating each other to death inside of these prisons. And that is something that people from California and other states don't understand. In our prison system, and I know you've seen it, it's whites celled with blacks, blacks celled with Hispanics, Hispanics celled with whites. Like, it's very hard to get a cellmate.
No segregation.
Right. There's no segregation. And as he just said, they had him in there with somebody way bigger, which is not really how it's supposed to be. I'm 220, so that means I could be in a cell with somebody 270 or somebody 170. You know what I mean? Right. That's crazy as it works. I can be the big guy, or I can feel like a little tiny guy in the cell. It's just a roll of the dice. So that story right there, I want y'all to pay attention, because that man that was screaming, they had to get gurneyed out. He still had to do prison time after that. Now, his name is ruined forever. It's obviously something that he didn't want. That dude took something, and now he's probably going to be at a place like Price Daniels and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, so, he got PC'd.
I know he did. He's going to have to be like that the rest of his way, because now he's labeled as a penitentiary punk, and he didn't even, you know what I'm saying? He didn't even want that, and nor did he even get a chance to retaliate, right? Like, he could have maybe came back and would have killed that dude and maybe cleared his name, but now he's gone and he's in PC.
And I mean, like, what these youngsters don't understand is, you know, they get into this penitentiary life, and, you know, I learned real quick that between inmate and inmate, respect was the number one thing between them. You know, if somebody disrespects somebody else, you know, I got to get ready for somebody to come up to me and tell me they got to go to medical, or I'm going to catch somebody that's been busted up and banged up. But it's also, you know, some of these officers will put hits on inmates. They'll send them the green light. Absolutely. And we'll make them ready, available. Where was it? Was it Daniels or what? Yeah, it was Daniels, because it was one of the few times that I saw something ever go down. So like I was telling you about the wings, there's this one old boy over here in this wing that wanted to get him some of this other dude. Well, that dude smarted off to a female officer talking about how she looked good and stuff, and it pissed her off, you know, and you're supposed to be wearing, you know, color-coded bands. Well, she purposely put the other inmate in the other wing long enough to go do what he needed to do, brought him out, put him back in his wing so he wouldn't get out of place, And at that time, I mean, there was just not a lot of cameras that you were going to catch. I don't think they caught him on camera at all. But we all knew what happened. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I'm opening my mouth now. I may not have ever done anything or condone anything, but back to Grace, some real shit. You don't open your mouth, because if you do, you're going to lose your job for it.
Yeah, we're going to tie this up in about five minutes, but that's where I wanted you to put it, okay? So, back to Gray is real. You seen all this happening. To me, so to play the devil's advocate and take their side, right? Is there any other way to run the system and control these men that have already shown that they're almost uncontrollable? Like, could every prison guard in Texas walk in, be nice, be friendly, follow the rules, and still be safe, come home alive?
No. I always had my eyes in the back of my head and knew it. Complacency is not just the thing that'll kill an inmate. Complacency will kill an officer. You know, there's been plenty of times where it's been documented that there's been, you know, trustees or inmates that were always nice, did this and that, but you catch somebody on a bad day, you know, it doesn't matter who you are. You get fucked up, inmate or officer. But I think that the system's messed up because, like, and we'll probably get into it next time we do another one of these, because I went to work for Oklahoma, and it was different than night and day. They had way more privileges, had more stuff. They had their own televisions, you know, shit like that. And I think that because in TDC, we don't give the inmates anything to do or that they're willing to lose. What you going to lose? You're going to lose your rec, you're going to lose your phones, and you're going to lose visitation. And that's pretty much it. So what do you do if you're an inmate that doesn't get any of that shit? He's indigent. Nobody comes and sees him. Nobody writes him. And he can't call nobody. So you think he gives a shit? No, he don't give a damn about nobody. Not an officer, not an inmate. So I think the system's messed up just because, you know, the hard on crime thing. You're not going to get televisions in your freaking rooms like they do in Oklahoma. And, you know, they had softball teams in Oklahoma and foosball tables down at the rec. They kind of had like a rec center. I think that while we both know there's people in there that need to be in there, and I met a lot of cats in there that tell you, like, I deserve to be here. And a lot of them will tell you they don't deserve it.
You got to spend time in both places, and it's like that. We know human beings are human beings everywhere you go, all 50 states, every country in the world. Do you think Oklahoma, being a more rural area though, with not the big cities and all that, are they? So I don't know what's the difference. Like, is this Texas? Is this Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin shit where it's so violent, so much street shit? Has that got something to do with the prisons being stupid here versus better there? Like, I mean, are they? I don't know. Is it a different caliber of inmate? Is what I'm asking.
I definitely say that. I would definitely say there's a different caliber of inmate. Like, a lot of those Oklahoma cats that thought they were hot shit, I'd tell officers and those inmates, you wouldn't last a day in Beto, freaking Ferguson, Walls. You know, no way could those inmates last.
We got guys coming out of Houston, out of 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, Homestead. You got South Dallas, Oak Cliff, them Eastwood dudes, Fort Worth. Like, these people are stone cold killers. Yeah, killers, and they love to fight. Like, they fist fight out of this world. Like, can fight, you know. So they're not scared of shit.
And it's not just the men, man. Like, I was privileged enough. I guess you call it privileged enough. Like, I was never assigned to a female unit, but I would go down to, I think it was Ellen Halbert female unit, and then there was Riverside, I think it was, something like that for females here in Texas. And then I also did a little bit over at the Mabel Bassett in Oklahoma. I had family live down there, and I just wanted to see what it was like with these females. And that's why I laugh too, because these officers go in here 2 seconds.
All right, Mr. Mike Beck, got to handle your business. We respect that, man. We just appreciate you being here, right? So you're saying about guarding the women and them coming out of them rough spots too. Are the women like that? Can you tell which one's coming out of the rough spots?
I don't know so much if I could tell where they came from, but these females, especially them studs, man, they could swing it like any man. But I'll never forget, there was this one girl, she was like 5'2", 5'3", might have been a $140 soaking wet. But boy, when I say she got hands, like she could fist fight. And a lot of these officers are going to these female units because they're thinking it's soft. It ain't like that. And I feel bad more for the females than I even do the males, because, you know, the officers do real dirty shit there. And we could talk way more in depth about that, but like they use their position of power to have sex with these females, and it's either you do it or they're gonna make your lives live in hell. So these girls that are out there riding with these guys that are here, hold my pistol and hold my drugs and whatever, like it's just as bad for y'all, if not worse, than it is for the men.
It really is. That's what. So it's hard to find women to talk about. I'm glad you said that. We did an interview with a chick from Fort Worth about 2 weeks ago, and she basically, I think she did a good job of showing women that ain't about that life, why they don't want to be there, even the ones that are, right? So I want to ask you something, and we'll close it. We basically established and we know that playing with these prison guards in Texas, you're going to lose. There's too many of them. They got the advantage. They got the gas. They got the turtle suits. They got the sticks. They got all kind of stuff they can hit with you. But what's probably the worst thing that you ever seen happen to an inmate by him getting into it with guards?
So the worst that I ever saw was what actually finally made me open my mouth and not go with the flow. We were running a team, the Goon Squad, because I was told it was he had something in his cell. I think it was. I don't remember the just, but once I found out the actual reason is why I didn't agree with it, he had ran his mouth to one of the ranks. I believe it was the sergeant, and just pissed him off to no end to give justification for a team. So we decided to run the team, and it just so happened that this team was all of the bigger officers that he could find, whether it was guys that were like me that was out there lifting weights or just guys that had more weight to them. I was never the shield man, number one. I never went in with the shield just because I wasn't. They wanted the real big girthy dudes to go in first, and so I still stayed back in my number 4, number 5 position, and we opened up his bean slot, which is the food slot. They gassed him in there, got him coughing and a hacking. And they roll the doors, and we roll in on him, and you're pushing in, you're just shoving your guy in front of you in. And we're on the ground, and he's kicking, and I'm trying to get his legs, and I heard this, like, whole different type of scream in my entire time of working there that I never had heard before. And once we get him shackled and we get him rolled, the officer had literally shoved his finger in his eye socket, bro, and ripped that motherfucker's eyeball out. And he wound up losing his entire eye for that. So when we went back, we have to, you got to do a use of force paperwork. And most of the time we would all just, write down what we were told to write down, how it all went. You didn't really have your own opinion. It was pretty much uniform. So that way that there was no way to conversate. And before somebody's like, oh, well, you got a camera, that camera magically gets shut off or fallen down or whatever. So it didn't ever get caught on camera. And when I found out why we went in there, I just couldn't take it no more. So I bucked the system, and an investigation got processed. But the fucked up thing is I don't remember anybody, not an officer, getting any type of free world charge. Even the officer that actually did the whole pop the eyeball out, he didn't even get a charge. They just popped his eyeball out, and that's it, man. So I reported it. A lot of officers got fired. I think one officer got suspended, and then my career was over because the officers made my life a living fucking nightmare after that.
Yeah, and that's how it's real, man. So that's now you just said why there's the back to gray. We talked about it at first, rural location where these people need these jobs. It's a system that facilitates that type of behavior. They want that type of behavior, but at the same time, it's sometimes necessary to have that behavior. It's really unfortunate that it's like this.
Yeah.
But we just appreciate you coming and keeping it real, right? Like, this is something
that's no problem, bro.
Been weighing on this man's chest for a long time, and he wanted to get it out there, and we have more to talk about, bro. Man, listen, you see him in that big rig right there. It just means a lot that you did this, bro. And thank you so much. All right, I want you to be
Yeah.
safe, man.
I just wanted to add real quick at the end, if you don't mind. Like, I love how you are trying to tell these youngsters and these young ladies, you don't want this life. And I just want to make sure to reiterate it again. Like, when you get in the penitentiary, you got to learn all of their rules plus our rules. And if you step out of line with either one, it could end your life. There are officers out there that will make you available if somebody's got a hit on you and that officer's dirty, especially if he's out there, making money with them. And if he's like say this officer's making money off of let's just say one of the woods, and this inmate's over here writing grievances or making his job hard or fucking with his money, like that can end your life all because the officer helped end your life. So I just I'll be more than willing if you ever want to do another interview. You keep doing what you're doing, and I will do everything I can, because it just feels good after all this time to finally say, like, I should have opened my mouth years ago, but the system got to change, man. It's got to. I understand people are in there for doing wrong, and maybe they do deserve to be in there, but nobody deserves to have happen, with things that I've seen happen.
No, I agree. And thank you so much. I think this is going to wake up a lot of the family members and let them realize that your loved one ain't in high school. You can't call the principal, none of that type shit. This is real life, man. Mike, thank you, brother. Have a great day, and we'll catch you later. All right. Anyway, I definitely want to do some more with you, too, because I see a lot of possibilities here, and we got a lot to talk about, man. You have a great day.
Oh,
Drive
yeah.
safe. All right.
You too.
All right. Yeah, Texas Prison Story family. Listen, that was deep right there. This man here literally lost his job that he had for 10 years just because he couldn't take it no more. And some people, I don't know how to say it. I've had so many ex-COs hit me that shit like this is on their mind too, but they don't want to talk about it because none of them want to admit to being around it, right? But we can't never fault a person feeding their family, paying their bills, getting involved in some shit like this that they had no idea they were going to get involved with. And eventually they either leave the system or they just go crazy, I think. You know what I'm saying? Seeing people getting killed, seeing people getting raped, seeing people being mistreated, whether it's inmates mistreating each other, officers mistreating each other, or officers mistreating inmates. It's just a negative environment, right? Like, you talk about vibes and good energy. That's not the place where it's at. So y'all stay the hell out of there, man, and just realize this is not the life you want, for real. Hit that thumbs up for me.